So I'm sure that, like me, if you're anywhere sort of near around my age, the mid to late 20s, you would have grown up as a kid with Yu-Gi-Oh! Would have collected the cards, would have watched the OG seasons of the anime, that and GX, maybe into 5Ds as well, if you stuck with it in towards your sort of late childhood, early teens kind of thing. And you would have absolutely loved it. It would have been one of your first gateways into the world of trading card games. But now, looking at what modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Is, it's quite confusing and can be quite a high barrier to try and get into. Well, this week, Konami have done something really, really interesting, because they've released a completely brand new format, maybe slightly tied into trying to get some of that audience back into the game. So in this video, we are going to talk about that format from the perspective of someone that hasn't played the game since they were a kid and has had a couple of looks into the game thinking, maybe, just maybe, we should give this game a shot. My name's Ben Fitzpatrick, I'm a TCG caster, and I just love talking about them. So let's do that right now. But before we go ahead and get into today's video, if you do enjoy it, please feel free to drop a like rating on it. Subscribe to the channel as well if you haven't already. Like, I know over 80% of the people that watch my videos have not done. If you're coming back on the regular and you're enjoying the content, you might as well subscribe. It's completely free to do so, and it helps me out a ton with the support as well. While you're down there as well, chuck me a comment in the comments section with your reactions to this brand new format for Yu-Gi-Oh! And also be sure to check out my link tree, which is in the description, where you can follow me on other social platforms. Yes, that's right, in a shock move that was announced during the week for Yu-Gi-Oh! By Konami themselves, Genesys is a brand new format that has been created for the game. I know that I'm a little late to the party on the news here, because ever since this, a bunch more stuff has been released by Konami themselves, which we'll dive into here in a second. But I thought this would be cool to react to it and have a little bit of a take on it. As I said, as someone who has not played the game since they were a kid, even like, I'm talking, I didn't even play with like synchro summoning and things like that. And has been, over the past 3 to 6 months or so, looking out the outside into the game and going, you know what, this game does look cool. The barrier for entry is quite high, though, in terms you've got to learn a lot. It can be quite expensive as well to be able to play sort of the tier 1 or tier 0 decks that can sort of litter various formats. But Genesys is looking to try and correct that. So, what is Genesys? Essentially, it's still the normal Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game. However, there's no link monsters, which are the blue ones, which I'll pop up on the screen here, the blue ones that have the arrows on them. And there's no pendulum monsters that are allowed. So those are the ones that are not only monster cards, but also have like spell card-like effects. And on the modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Game board, you have a spell card slot, a spell trap slot on either side. That is also a pendulum slot with the arrow pointing in and through the spell and trap zone. Those are gone. So already we're removing two confusing mechanics, especially with pendulums. We're refusing two of those mechanics out of the game. The original field layout is also used. So that means, as I said, there's none of those pendulum zones in the spell and trap zone. There's also no extra monster zones, which are little places that are shared on the board in between. So like above the monster zone and in the middle of what is a field center. Those are gone. So all of your extra deck monsters, so your fusions, your rituals, your not your pendulums, your synchros, those kind of things, your Xyz monsters, those all go in the regular monster card zone, just as they would in the anime, for example. The second important rule is that there's no such thing as a ban list in this game. Everything can be used as long as it's not a link or a pendulum monster, and it's still the maximum of 3 of any card that applies. So already, again, this is a big, big enticement to people that didn't play the game for 10, 15 years to come back and give it a try. Because all of a sudden, you can now use cards like Pot of Greed. You can now use cards like Graceful Charity. You can now use cards like Max C. There's so many cards from classic Yu-Gi-Oh! That were on the ban list that have now all of a sudden come back. And the question you might be thinking is, well, that's all well and good, Ben, having this massive nostalgia hit, but surely that just means the format's an absolute mess, right? Because there's banned cards at 3-ofs running everywhere. Well, that's where one of the most unique mechanics of Yu-Gi-Oh! Genesys comes into play. Because your deck uses a points-based system. So for those who are maybe familiar with fantasy sports, it uses a salary cap. And your normal salary cap for an event is 100. Most cards have no point cost, but there are cards that do, which we'll go into a few in a minute, and this isn't even an exhaustive list. They've already updated the point scoring list as of, I think, yesterday or a day or two before at the time of recording this video. So the standard point cap is 100, but events can be run with any point cap. So they can either increase the cap up to like 200 or 500, or they can set it as a 0-point cap, meaning that all of these cards that we're going to go through here with a couple of highlights, you just cannot play because you're having to score with them. It's really, really interesting. I think it's a really, really cool idea and mechanic. There's not many games off the top of my head that have experimented with, like I say, this like fantasy sports style of salary cap. Because as well, this doesn't just apply to your main deck, it's also your extra deck, where all of your Xyzs, fusion monsters, synchro summons, and stuff like that go, and your side deck. All of it together cannot exceed the standard 100-point cap, if we're talking in a standard format. Which is really, really cool. So you can't just, like, load a load of cool cards into your main deck to get the 100 points, and then in your side deck still have a load of hand traps and stuff like that, like Ash Blossom, Effect Veiler, Max C, those kinds of things. Max C, by the way, is a 50-point card, for those that were maybe scared of it. I can go down here. Max C costs 50 points to run, so that's half of your scoring cap that is already accounted for, which is just absolutely insane. It's really, really cool. I really, really like the sound and the look of this. As someone who hasn't played the game for ages, all of a sudden, you're removing links and pendulums. Pendulums being one of the most difficult mechanics in Yu-Gi-Oh! I think, from an outsider's perspective at the very least. And link summons as well, which is such a heavy reliance in the modern game for combo decks and combo plays that have like those, typical 10, 15, 20-minute turns that Yu-Gi-Oh! Players are assigned with, at the very least. Whether that's true or not is a different story, but, you're now, all of a sudden, kind of essentially either removing or heavily nerfing really strong cards and archetypes. So things like Abyss Dweller, which was recently put on the standard ban of Forbidden and Limited list, is 100 points. So you have to pay your entire regular cap to have one copy of Abyss Dweller in the deck. Things like Book of Moon, which is 7 points. Things like Branded Lost, which is 66 points. Branded Fusion, which is 33. Called by the Grave, which is a really important staple card that stops the activation of effects from monsters in the graveyard. That costs 20 points. So if you want to run a full play set, that's 60 points of your cap that is already gone. Where is Ash as well? Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, one of the most common hand traps in the game, is 15 points. So not super expensive, but you start to see then where it adds up, because if you're wanting to play a maximum for consistency, you're paying 45 points for those 3 cards. The Danger Engine has a little bit of a points as well. D-Shifter is at 10 points. D-Barrier is at 100. Pancratops is at 10. Dogmatic Ecclesia is at 3. So it's like not a super important card price-wise that you're paying, but it's still a very good card, and you're having to think about that with the remainder of the cards that you're wanting to put in the engine and in the deck. So it's really, really cool that we've got this kind of, not exactly a ban list, but it is a limitations list, as it were. And there's still so many of decks that are out there that just are going to ignore this list completely and are going to go for just pure zero cost cards, which is really, really fun and really interesting in some of the deck building that we've seen early on in Genesys. But that's not the only thing that we've had. We've also already had so many articles that have been released over the past week regarding YuGiOh Genesys. Something about asking, what's the point of a point system? What happens if you make the next deck? Are you just going to heavily point restrict it in the next update? Where are the opportunities where we're going to start to see Genesys getting played? Well, for those in the present, right now, OTS stores, so your local game stores, can already start running Genesys with their OTS program, which is really, really great. And in the future, we're going to see these Genesys Invitationals and a full-on Genesys-only YCS, which is kind of like a major competitive. Think of like an offline regionals, maybe, if you're equating it to like One Piece card game or Gundam card game, that sort of thing, which is really, really good. They're supporting this right out of the gate with competitive events. We've also got the ideas about what went into the actual testing process of Genesys when they were testing out the ideas and seeing, okay, a lot of people were just immediately dropping all of the defensive cards, so like these hand traps, because they cost too much, and using them on consistency cards instead. But the player that did end up including some defensive cards, Droll and Lockbird being the one that was named here, ended up finishing third. So there's a real interesting balance of, okay, how much of the point cap do I spend on these more defensive cards, on these hand traps, and how much of the point cap do I spend on a big boss monster in the extra deck, or some important consistency and engine tools for my general strategy of the deck. Things like Branded Fusion and Branded Loss, like we talked about earlier. The fact that there has already been another points adjustment 2 days ago, at the time of recording this video, we've already had cards that have had their cost increased. So Chicken Game has gone from 0 to 7. Evil Swarm Ouroboros has gone from 0 to 67. A couple of the Canine cards have had prices put on them. There's also been cards that have been reduced in cost. So Droll and Lockbird, that we were talking about earlier, it's now only 5 points. Mulchami Meows is only 3 points. So we're already, before a full event has even officially been played with this format yet, seeing updates, which is absolutely amazing. And they're also giving an idea of, well, where do I start? What are some ideas maybe that I could try out with this format? And smartly, they've started the spotlight with Blue Eyes. Because as I said at the start of this video, and the whole reason for really doing this video in the first place, is that so many of the old school, Yugi boomers, as they're called, which is absolutely horrifying to think that I'm being considered a boomer in any kind of stretch of any imagination, but that's an existential crisis for another video. But the whole point that I was making is that so many of the original old school Yu-Gi-Oh players have abandoned the game entirely for years and years because so many other mechanics were getting added. Link monsters, pendulum monsters, XZs, synchros, hand traps, just so much was being thrown our way. And we just said, you know what, that's just too complicated. And then you have the, the OTK decks, you have the combo decks and stun decks that either just stop you from playing the game, and you go, okay, cool, I'm out. I don't want any of that anymore. But now, we're giving a potential route back in towards what is being engineered still as the main game, because it does play the exact same as the main traditional version of Yu-Gi-Oh! With a couple of FAQ answers as well here. But we are primarily targeting this and engineering this towards a lot of people that were disenfranchised with the game previously and wanting to bring them back. So Blue Eyes, of course, being one of the most, if not the most, iconic boss monster for OG Yu-Gi-Oh! Let's highlight it. Let's show that, hey, you can play your old school Blue Eyes White Dragons, but in a new version and in a new format with things like Wishes for Eyes of Blue, Majesty, Bingo Machine Go, Spirit Dragon, you know, and not having to worry about these convoluted combos that work with the Link 1 and then going into the Link 2, the Horatic Spheres, and making it like super convoluted that way. Like it says right at the top, Spirit with Eyes of Blue and Horatic Seal of the Heavenly Spheres. We don't have to worry about any of those Link combos anymore because Links don't exist in Yu-Gi-Oh! Genesis. So I think this is really cool, in all honesty. Like I said, I've been looking precariously at Yu-Gi-Oh! Having worked with people that are really big into Yu-Gi-Oh! Before. A friend and fellow caster colleague of mine, Spessy, as well, Joe Curley, who does a lot of the Lorcana stuff. He set himself a challenge where he tried to learn Yu-Gi-Oh! In a week and then play in an event with Blue Eyes. I definitely need to get in touch with him after this announcement and see if maybe he wants to run it back with Genesis as well, because this format just looks really fun. Am I going to be delving further into this? Maybe. I'm certainly be interested in it. I think I'd have to find a budget deck first off to start with. So by all means, down in the comment section, let me know some good budget ideas for some Genesis decks. Blue Eyes could potentially be an idea, but I know it relies quite heavily on the Primite engine, which is quite expensive. So Lordilo, Drill Beam, and Ether Barrel. I know those cards are quite expensive because I checked on Card Market last night. But you know, some older school decks, so maybe something like Cyber Dragon. Ancient Gears, I know, has had a bit of a hit on the points cap. Advance and Stature are both at 33, so maybe not quite that. Toons? I wonder if Toons could be any good in Yu-Gi-Oh! Genesis as like an old school throwback. I know I went to school with a load of people that played Yu-Gi-Oh! During the Spellbooks era, and that looked really good. So maybe Spellbooks with Endymion could be cool in this format as well. I know a lot of the Spellbook cards are 0 points, so yeah, by all means, let me know down in the comments section what decks that you think that I should try, and if you want me to keep on covering this game and this format as well. While you're down there doing that, though, let me know what your initial reactions are to Yu-Gi-Oh! Genesis. What do you think about the whole salary cap points thing? Let me know about what you think about the cards that are named with points totals as they are at the moment. Does anything need to be extended? Does anything need to be reduced? Does more need to go onto this list? Let me know in the comments section. While you're down there as well, if you did enjoy this video, do go ahead and consider dropping a like rating on it, and subscribe to the channel as well if you want to see more Yu-Gi-Oh! Genesis coverage, as well as other TCG related content as well. But until then, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and until the next time, we'll see you soon. Goodbye for now.